When thinking of classic movie monsters, there are few that have stood the test of time and had a bigger cultural impact than zombies. Zombies have become a worldwide phenomenon, stumbling their way into novels, TV shows, comics, and of course, video games. Zombie games are arguably one of the most popular and successful genres of video games to date. From around 2006 to 2012, zombie video games really hit the mainstream. Games that weren't even about zombies, more often than not, had zombies in them. Back then, it seemed like every other game to come out was either about zombies or had zombies in it. As the years went on, the idea of what a zombie game could be began to shift, which led to a lot of creative and bizarre zombie game releases. Zombies were no longer just used to scare you in something like a survival horror. Zombies could be transferred into a hack and slash game, a point and click story driven game. Hell, there are even games where you play as a zombie. The zombie archetype was something that was no longer considered indie, but rather transcended the video game industry as a whole. To anyone who was a fan of the genre, this was definitely a dream come true, but it must be said that zombie games really fell off. As the market became saturated with these games, people began to care less and less. Zombie games released after this time frame were very hit and miss. Mostly miss though. Developers had to do something truly special with the formula to catch consumers' attention again. Sadly, it feels like zombie games still haven't returned to that god tier status they built for themselves all those years ago. It's honestly really quite sad. Oh god, all this talk about zombies falling from grace is really getting to me. I need something to take my mind off of it. Wait a minute, I know. I'll talk about a classic zombie game trilogy from my childhood. That will surely raise my spirits at least a little. Have a quick think back to 2011. What were all of you at home playing that year? Perhaps you were playing Skyrim for the first time, or having a friendly conversation with some strangers on Modern Warfare 3. Me? Well, I was playing on Arma Games, of course. Arma Games was a treasure trove of amazing free-to-play games, and a godsend to anyone who wasn't allowed Xbox Live. Thanks, Mother. And it was through Arma Games that I got introduced to one of the simplest, and yet so addictive zombie game trilogies. I'm of course talking about the Last Stand trilogy. I'm sure anyone who has had the privilege of browsing through Arma Games has heard of this legendary trio. The series was created by Chris Condon, the founder of Con Artist Games, who was also responsible for creating the legendary Warfare flash game series. The original Last Stand trilogy was released from 2007 to 2011, with Last Stand releasing in 2007, Last Stand 2 releasing in 2008, and Last Stand Union City releasing in 2011. These games, for how simple they were, left such a huge impact on me after playing them. I found the gameplay so addictive and fun, and it's really impressive that something that looked as simple as this made me feel anxious and frantically panic. Any outsiders who have never played these games before may be thinking, really? You were scared of that? Yes, it may come as quite a shock that an alpha male like me was scared of something that looked like this, but 10-year-old me was a bit of a puss. Nevertheless, mechanics and the atmosphere of the games kept me playing, and if you haven't at least tried any of them, you are missing out big time. My heart nearly broke once Flash shut down in 2020, as I thought I would never get the chance to play these games again, but thankfully the trilogy lived on, as all three games were re-released on Steam in 2021. In fact, in honour of Last Stand's second coming, I'm going to be talking about why the games are so great. Just the first three though. I know there have been other games released since then, but forget them, it's all about the original three. Let's begin with Last Stand Uno, the game that started it all. In terms of story, there isn't much to go off. If you're looking for a groundbreaking and emotionally moving story, then this game may not be for you. In fact, there isn't much of a story until the third game. In this game, you play as Jack, a survivor of a deadly zombie outbreak who has come up with the ingenious idea to stack boxes on top of each other and hide behind them. Now, although there isn't much of a story, there are some pieces of lore that help us understand the character of Jack, like these little pieces of thought Jack scribbles down onto his notepad. Ah, isn't that cute? I love when things with zombies in try to be cute. Obviously, you don't play this game for the narrative. That's like saying you play Plants vs Zombies for the plot, when we all know we play it for the sunflower. From a game developing standpoint, Last Stand may not seem like much when compared to other zombie games that were out at the time. The graphics are meh, and there isn't much to the gameplay. And although this is fairly true, the game takes these simple concepts and creates a very memorable and at times challenging experience. The game involves you defending your barricade from zombies for a total of 20 nights until the military comes to find you. To the average pea-brain gamer, this seems too simplistic to enjoy, but the game adds extra layers to this tried and tested tower defense formula. Every time you finish a night, you are designated 12 hours before the next night arrives. These hours can be used to repair your barricade if it's damaged, search for weapons, or look for survivors to help defend your precious barricade. As the nights progress, the zombie horde becomes stronger as they begin to grow larger in numbers, and enemy variations begin to appear. Hey look, look, it's you watching the video. The game gradually gets harder, and planning how to spend your hours begins to become more important, as if your barricade takes too much damage and you spend too many hours repairing it, you won't be able to get the better guns for the late game. Searching for weapons also comes with the risk of losing survivors from your party, as without Jack's guidance they become just as brainless as the zombies. Now maybe it's just the nostalgia, or maybe I just haven't matured since I was 10, but the pretty bland gameplay I just described to you is actually pretty good. Most mediums that tackle the zombie genre should aim to make the audience feel uncomfortable in some way. Uncomfortable makes it sound bad, but what I mean is, zombie games are at their best when they make the player feel anxious, and this game does a surprisingly good job at making you feel intimidated by the ever-growing zombie horde. The early nights aren't so bad, but the gradual difficulty really starts to make you panic, which is just crazy to think about considering games with well over 10 times the budget of this game failed to do this. Last Stand 2 stays very true to the original, but makes several changes to the formula that seem pretty insignificant on paper, but massively improve the gameplay. Jack once again has to fend for himself behind yet another barricade after the helicopter he used to escape in the first game had an infected on board. Okay, rule number 1, if you're in a zombie film, zombie game, zombie comic, anything with zombies in, never get on a helicopter. That bitch is just itching to crash. The military have declared the zombie infested area officially screwed, so Jack has 40 days to reach Union City before all the passages to safety are closed for good. The core gameplay stays the same: shoot zombies, repair your barricade, and find weapons and survivors. However, the rules have changed just a little. Everything is a lot more defined, making the experience feel a lot more engaging. The aim of the game is to travel to Union City, and you can't do that without supplies. There are many locations throughout the game you have to travel through, and in each of these locations there are homes, stores, and other buildings you can choose to search in order to find these supplies. These supplies are essential to your survival, as without them you cannot travel to the next destination to make it that little bit closer to Union City. Supplies aren't the only things you need to survive, as just like in the previous game, survivors and weapons are able to be found. The gunometer is not included in Last Stand 2, so you are not given that cushion of knowing when you will get a new weapon, and so it is possible for you to leave an area without anything new to kill zombies with. Whilst this may seem like a huge disadvantage, it really helps make this game feel that little bit scarier than the previous one. The game is essentially on a timer for you to complete it. If you fail to make it to Union City in the 40-day time period, then it's game over. This fact, partnered with the mechanic of having to comb through every location you stumble into, puts pressure on you, as although you need weapons and survivors to keep pushing forward, you can't really linger too long as you won't have enough time to travel. Several other details were added to freshen up the combat in the game as well. Survivors probably had one of the bigger overhauls in the game, as they were made both more useful and vulnerable at the same time. Survivors in this game can be given weapons from your arsenal, meaning they no longer have to rely on their crappy pea shooters to kill zombies. I say kill, but those bad boys barely leave a bruise. Now in the previous game, survivors could only be killed by chance if you got unlucky searching for weapons or other survivors, or if your barricade broke and they ran away, presumably dying. Zombies began to get pissed off by this, and for this, Jesus took pity on them and bestowed upon them the ability to use melee weapons. This is why, for me at least, Last Stand 2 is probably my favourite in the trilogy. It never fails to put you on edge. Even now, after playing it, I still find myself getting stressed as to whether or not I would be able to beat the game. Now, Last Stand 2 made some fairly small changes to the core concept. Last Stand Union City, on the other hand, sent the series in another direction completely. Rather than go for the tower defense style of gameplay the two previous games went for, Last Stand Union City is instead a free-roaming survival horror. As expected, this massively changes the identity of Last Stand, abandoning most of the gameplay mechanics of 1 and 2, and this is made clear as you do not play as Jack in this game, but rather as your own made-up character. The character's name can be changed, allowing you to enter the zombie apocalypse as yourself, or even a famous internet celebrity. As well as this, your character's appearance can also be customized, including both their natural appearance and their clothes, that you can change as you progress through the game. Game starts with you crashing your car just outside of Union City whilst attempting to reunite with your partner, and so you have to battle your way through the city to find them and escape to safety, all the while killing zombies and helping survivors. The game's style is more in line with traditional open world and survival horror zombie games. The player is no longer confined to sitting behind a barricade all day, so instead the player is able to explore a large part of Union City on a 2D plane. Despite some seeing this as a restriction, the game gives you a lot of freedom to explore, allowing you to enter many buildings to find supplies. Yes, searching for supplies is still a thing, but rather than it just being you picking from buildings on a map, like in Last Stand 2, Union City lets you search for supplies manually, letting you look through cupboards, boxes, and other hiding places. This was a necessary change as it makes the gameplay flow, allowing you to search for weapons, ammo, and food at your own pace. It's also worth mentioning that this game has a difficulty selection. There is hard mode, which requires your character to eat and sleep to survive, giving the game a sense of realism, and adding that extra layer of challenge on top of managing your ammo and fighting zombies. And of course there is also easy/normal mode, which really should be renamed to I'm a bitch mode, as it makes ammo more plentiful and you do not need to eat or sleep. The eating and sleeping mechanics are actually really useful mechanics, as they help cement the game as a true survival horror experience. Removing these things makes the experience feel too easy. Eating encourages the player to actively scavenge supplies, never letting you get too complacent, and sleeping can only be done in safe zones, so it's wise to plan out a route back to one, as to not deprive yourself of a good night's rest. The combat in Union City is pretty much identical to what we saw in Last Stand 1 and 2, but now you can also use a variety of melee weapons for close encounters. The inventory of guns has also been greatly extended, all of which range in usefulness, but arguably the most impressive change implemented in Union City is the skill point system. Throughout the game, performing tasks like killing zombies and helping survivors grants you XP, which obviously levels you up, and once you level up, you are granted skill points to spend on a variety of different skills, as well as upgrading your basic skills like endurance, strength, luck, etc. There are more specific skills you can upgrade that help improve precise aspects of your character, like improving your ability to use bladed or blunt weapons, pistols or heavier guns, and even your ability to pick locks. This adds a huge layer of replayability and variety never seen in this series before, as it gives you endless combinations to try out, allowing you to tackle the game in different ways on each playthrough. The variety of weapons at your disposal really lets you get creative with how you want to take enemies down, until you buy the katana from King Pawn over here and you realise it's the best weapon in the game. Seriously, it's kind of broken. Yeah, food and weapons aren't the only things that can be found. Money can be found to spend on several pawn shops around the city, and you can also find books that give you additional skill points for specific skills. Now, as much as this game has demonstrated the survival aspect of the survival horror genre, it's time we looked at the horror elements the game brings to the table. Last Stand 1 and 2 were not outright scary. Sure, they were stressful and have quite a lot of blood in them, but let me put it this way, your granny wouldn't have a heart attack playing this, let's be real. Union City, on the other hand, may not kill her either, but she'll definitely shit her pants. It's impressive how much this game manages to at least shock you and set such a dark tone. The level design, although simple, is stylistically very effective and is just detailed enough to convey a chaotic and broken city. The lighting is often very dark in buildings, putting you on edge as you carefully search for anything useful, whilst also having to keep your guard up for zombies that could very well be in the next room, or they could very well crash through the ceiling and completely catch you off guard. There are other smaller details in the game that add so much to the dark tone, like messages scribbled on walls you can find throughout the game depicting the thoughts and feelings of people living throughout Union City, telling the world their thoughts on the situation, and with some saying their final goodbyes to their loved ones. The other two games are great, with 2 being my personal favourite, but the fact that the simple 3-hour flash game manages to catch your interest and feel engaged in a world that looks so simple, or feel for characters that you have never even met, or hear speak, or convey any form of emotion other than a default blank expression, is incredible, and it's weird how many AAA games that came out after this can't deliver such a memorable experience. The Last Stand trilogy for me will go down as one of the best browser game franchises of all time. The fact that these games were free to play and delivered so much entertainment and ticked so many boxes should never be forgotten. If you have never played these games, what the hell are you doing? Go play them. Now, no particular point to this video, I just wanted to show my appreciation for this great little flash game series and how happy I am to see it thriving nowadays after all these years. So anyway, I don't know how to end the video, so I'm just going to cut it mid-sentence.